In this video, I'm going to be comparing the Christmas Carol franchise to the James Bond franchise. At this point, I've seen 26 different versions of Christmas Carol. There's a lot of them. There's also a lot of James Bond movies, but I haven't actually seen any of them. When it comes to the highest score for each franchise, when you look at the different adaptations of Christmas Carol, the 1938 black and white version of this story has a 100%. When you look at James Bond, highest score is a 99% for Goldfinger, which is one of the earliest James Bond movies. That's only the third one of these movies which has come out. And then when you look at lowest score for each franchise, in the case of Christmas Carol, lowest score is only a 13% for this version of the story that came out back in 2001, which is animated. When you look at James Bond, lowest score would be a 38% for the movie A View to a Kill, which is one of the later ones, because it is the 14th James Bond movie. Then when you look at average score for each franchise of James Bond, you have an average of 71. With Christmas Carol, you have an average of 55. James Bond wins here, meaning that right now James Bond has 2 points, Christmas Carol has 1. Then when you look at gap between lowest and highest score, with Christmas Carol, you have a gap of 87. In the case of James Bond, you have a gap of 61. So James Bond wins here, meaning it's won 3 of the rounds, so it's going to be winning this debate regardless of my personal opinion. But let's look at that now. Which franchise do I prefer? And for me, this one isn't actually very difficult. I would definitely say I prefer the Christmas Carol franchise. For one, if you think about it, this is one of the iconic classic stories. I mean, Christmas Carol is easily one of the most classic Christmas stories ever written. That's just a part of popular culture. I mean, everybody knows the classic iconic characters from the story: Ebenezer Scrooge, Nephew Fred, Bob Cratchit, Tiny Tim, Jacob Marley, and of course the Ghost as well. So many even lines of dialogue from this story are ones that everybody knows. Bah humbug, leave Christmas in your way and leave me to keep it in mine. Well, if they had rather die, perhaps they had better do so and decrease the surplus population. Spirit, why do you delight in torturing me? I told you, these are the shadows of the things that have been, that they are what they are. Do not blame me. Tell me, Spirit, will Tiny Tim live? That is the future. My realm is the present. However, I see a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. I see an empty seat by the fire. If these shadows remain unaltered, I believe the child will die. Why show me this if I am past all hope? I will honor Christmas and try to keep it in my heart all the year. You think about it, there's so many different versions of the story. A lot of them, anyway, follow the same outline and structure. The outline here is that you start off by showing the audience how our main character is a jerk. They're cold hearted, selfish, greedy, rude, mean, mistreat others. Usually, we see they underpay the people who work for them, and then they're haunted by the spirit of someone that they knew. Usually, this person was their business partner. The person who's currently dead comes back to warn our main character: I'm now suffering in the afterlife because I didn't care at all about other people while I was still alive, so now I have to live for all of eternity with that regret that I wasted my life, that there's so many opportunities I had to help other people, but I never took advantage of them. So now I have to constantly be reminded of the happiness that I could have had, but didn't ever seek to actually have while I was still alive. It's too late for me, but it's not too late for you. You still have a chance to escape my fate. Change while you still have time. Their main character is haunted by the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. They come back a changed person. So if you think about it, the outline here is that you start off right showing the audience how the main character is a jerk, and then they're visited by the ghost, and so they change for the better. And thus, when they come back to their life, they resolve to treat others better, to build a better life for themselves. So we see that at the end of the story, how they've embraced the Christmas spirit. The specific structure you usually see with a Christmas Carol adaptation is what I just talked about. That our main character is haunted by the spirit of someone that knew them while they were alive. And then our main character is haunted by the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. In general, Christmas Carol is something I like a bit more. This kind of Christmas kind of story that has sadness to it, of course, but ultimately ends in a heartwarming way. This story about someone learning the true meaning of Christmas just really works on an emotional level. It's very relatable, and so it just works. With a James Bond franchise, based on the things I've heard about it, it just feels to me like obviously this is an important franchise, yes, but it's also quite inconsistent, where you've had multiple different actors playing James Bond, and it feels to me like some of those actors are better than others. Also, I think nowadays it's not as easy as it was before to stay true to the fantasy of James Bond, to that escapist fantasy that you want from the character. What I'm talking about here is this idea that James Bond is this cool, suave, charming, handsome spy who's also a womanizer that sleeps with a different woman every night. In the day and age we live in of cultural sensitivity and political correctness, not as easy to stay true to that anymore. And you feel like now even the filmmakers are aware of this, because recent James Bond movies have even made jokes about being politically correct. So seems to me like the quality has varied a lot when it comes to the James Bond movies. When it comes to Christmas Carol, I think it's interesting that you have certain versions of the story that are more traditional, that have all the characters you know from Charles Dickens' book follow that structure and outline. And then you have less traditional versions of this story. Like, for example, the movie Scrooged, directed by Richard Donner. That one is a little bit different because rather than being set in Victorian era England, which is what you usually see, it's set in 1980s America. Our main character isn't named Ebenezer Scrooge, he's named Frank Cross. In fact, Frank Cross goes even further than Ebenezer Scrooge usually does, because Frank Cross flat out just fires a guy right at the beginning of the movie without any concern at all for how that would impact him. Usually that's not what Ebenezer Scrooge does. Usually he just underpays and mistreats his employees, but doesn't outright fire them. And then you have a movie called Spirited that came out back in 2022, which has Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell. This is definitely quite a different take on the story, where you learn very quickly that there's this whole organization devoted to helping people change for the better. You have the Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, and Future, and Jacob Marley, but then others that are involved in this organization as well. We also learn that the Ghost of Christmas Present is thinking, do I actually still want to continue being a ghost, or do I want to head back to Earth to have a life there? And then it says to his superiors, we should help this guy Clint Briggs to change for the better. His superiors, especially Jacob Marley, is like, no, we should not do that because Clint Briggs is unredeemable. You can't change this guy. We learn actually later on that the Ghost of Christmas Present in this case is actually Ebenezer Scrooge himself. After Ebenezer Scrooge died, he actually became the Ghost of Christmas Present. And because of his past, there's insecurity there because he's afraid about whether he can actually change for the better. Can I actually overcome my dark past, or am I never going to be able to change? That's something that he struggles with. And then he's trying to help this guy, Clint Briggs, change for the better. But because Clint is very smart, he completely turns the tables and actually helps out the Ghost of Christmas Present at the same time as the ghosts are trying to help him change for the better. And ultimately, we see at the end he actually does do something good. He does something selfless, and then he dies. Because actually, we see he chooses to step in front of a bus to save the Ghost of Christmas Present. So he ends up dying, so it's not totally happy, but he actually joins this organization, and we see that the things that helped him be a great shady businessman while he was alive actually lead to him being a great asset to this organization after he's dead. I really appreciate how this movie really found a different angle to look at this story from. And you also have movies like Mrs. Scrooge, for example, which basically takes a Christmas Carol story and just changes Scrooge to a lady rather than having Scrooge be a guy. But other than that, it's pretty much the same. And you have a movie like Ebenezer, which takes a Christmas Carol structure and outline, applies it to a Western setting. Then you have a movie like All Dogs Christmas Carol, which is a follow up to the movie All Dogs Go to Heaven. That's definitely different. It's about this dog, Charlie, who ends up using Christmas Carol like haunting to help change his former boss Scarface for the better. And you also have a movie like All American Christmas Carol, which came out quite a good amount of time ago. In that case, you have this lady who at first has had kids with multiple different guys, and we see she's not taking much responsibility for her children, not taking her role as a mother very seriously. So she's letting people down, and then she's haunted by these ghosts that help her to change things for the better. Then you have this movie called An American Christmas Carol. Those two titles are very similar. But it's about this guy named Benedict Slade who has that miserly Scrooge-like attitude, and then he's haunted by ghosts that help him to change things for the better. And you also have a movie like Nashville Christmas Carol, which I actually just watched this past weekend. That's definitely different. I mean, it's about this television producer who is a workaholic, who is haunted by the spirit of someone she knew during her life, and then she's haunted by Ghost of Christmas Past and Present, but not actually the Ghost of Christmas Future, which is very different because you see that in almost every single version of this story. And you also have the 2020 version of Christmas Carol. The one thing that sets this movie apart is that we see right at the beginning this grandmother is telling to her family the story called Christmas Carol. She's reading the book to her family. So you have someone narrating the whole time rather than characters talking to each other like you have in movies where there's not narration the whole time. I think Muppet Christmas Carol is a fantastic version of the story. You got a great performance by Michael Caine. Does a great job as Ebenezer Scrooge. The Muppets provide some humor, but there's solid dramatic moments as well. There's a movie called A Carol Christmas, where you have this lady who's in charge of a TV studio. She also was a jerk at the beginning, but then is haunted by the ghosts that help her to change her life for the better. I enjoy pretty much all the different versions of Christmas Carol that I've seen. Though I definitely think that Christmas Carol is the better franchise. I like how one thing you see in pretty much every version of this story is the Ghost of Christmas Past showing our main character the person they loved but let go. The ghost is holding the mirror up to our main character's face to remind them, hey, remember this person you loved? You could have married him or her. The two of you could have been happy together, but you pushed her away. And oftentimes we see for our main character when they watch the moment from their past when the person they loved left them, they start to feel that regret. Wait, what was I thinking? Why didn't I pursue this person? I should have done that. What was I thinking? I should have said something. I should have gone after them. I could have been happy if I had married them, but I squandered my opportunity. And often you see as well as the ghost showing our main character, hey, this person you pushed away actually is now married. They have a child now. That could have been you. Look at the life you could have had if you hadn't pushed the person away. It's a quite powerful moment. And oftentimes we also see is the Ghost of Christmas Present showing our main character, like, hey, this person who's working for you has a sick family member that requires medical care. At the beginning of the story, you have our main character turn away these people that asked for a donation to help with the poor. Our main character says something that's really cold and heartless, so they aren't concerned about people who are suffering. And then when our main character sees this person who's sick but is still cheerful, is still happy, and you have this family that doesn't have a lot but is actually content. Our main character's heart is moved, and thus they say to Ghost of Christmas Present, tell me, spirit, will this person, usually Tiny Tim, live? And then the ghost begin holding up the mirror says, hey, why do you care? And after all, if this person is to die, they should do it and decrease the surplus population. Hey, you said the world has too many people in it, isn't that right? Our main character, because of this, realizes, wait, what was I thinking? I shouldn't have said something that cold and lacking in concern for other people. And then the Ghost of Christmas Future shows our main character, hey, if you continue in your current ways, if you don't change, no one will mourn you when you're gone. You will die alone, unloved and unwanted. People will be happy that you're finally dead. Is that really what you want? Our main character realizes, no, I want to actually have people grieve for me when I'm gone. I don't want to die forgotten with no one caring. And so they resolved to change things for the better. This will wrap things up for the video. I definitely prefer Christmas Carol franchise